The world was watching when the decision was made. The Church stood at a critical turning point, and millions waited to see whether the next pope would come from a new place, bring a fresh voice, and symbolize real change. All eyes turned toward one man, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle of the Philippines. He wasn't just another candidate. For many, he was the hope. Young, deeply spiritual, kind-hearted, and a symbol of the global South, Tagle seemed to be everything the Church needed at that very moment. But despite the growing wave of excitement and expectations surrounding him, Cardinal Tagle was not chosen. This left many people asking, why? This is not just about one man missing an opportunity. This is about the direction of the Catholic Church, the decisions behind closed doors, and the deeper questions about leadership, tradition, and change. So what happened? What were the real reasons Cardinal Tagle, with all his compassion, intellect, and popularity, was passed over when the Church chose its next pope? Let's explore the 4 biggest reasons Cardinal Tagle was not chosen as pope. Reasons that go far beyond simple popularity or charisma. These reasons open a deeper window into the thinking of the Church's leadership and into what kind of future they imagine for the Catholic world. Cardinal Tagle has always been known for his warmth, compassion, and deep emotional connection with ordinary people. He speaks with a soft, calming voice and has a gift for making complicated teachings feel close to the heart. But behind that warmth is a man who isn't afraid to challenge the Church's tone and approach. While he has always remained faithful to Church teaching, he talks more about mercy than judgment, more about walking with sinners than condemning them. In a world where many feel left out or shamed by religious institutions, that kind of message is powerful and also risky. To many conservatives inside the Church, this makes him seem too modern, too ready to bend. His closeness to Pope Francis, who has pushed for a more open and pastoral Church, added to this concern. Some saw Tagle as a possible continuation, even an expansion of Francis's style. For some cardinals, this was exciting, but for others, it was alarming. In a time when parts of the Church are pulling back toward older traditions, they feared that Tagle would go too far in the other direction. For example, Tagle has often focused on listening to people rather than preaching at them. He speaks of shared journeys, of walking with the poor, the broken, and even those who struggle with Church teachings. While this has touched many hearts, it has also raised concerns that he might soften the Church's firm positions on moral issues, not by changing doctrine, but by changing the Church's tone and approach. Inside the walls of the Vatican, where power and caution often go hand in hand, this gentle and listening style was seen by some as a risk. The conclave that chooses the Pope includes men with very different views, and in such a group, caution often wins. Cardinal Tagle's message of openness, while inspiring to many on the outside, was seen by some on the inside as too uncertain, too pastoral, and too modern in a time when many longed for a firm hand and clearer boundaries. In the world of Church leadership, personal holiness and compassion are important, but so is politics, especially inside the Vatican. The Vatican, for all its spiritual language, is also a place of politics, alliances, and influence. Decisions about leadership are often shaped not only by who inspires people, but by who has deep relationships, powerful supporters, and experience navigating the complex world of Church governance. Cardinal Tagle is beloved across the world for his humility. He has never been someone who fights for position or attention. He does not play political games. In fact, he avoids them. This is part of what makes him so deeply respected by ordinary Catholics. But in the context of a papal election, it may have worked against him. While Tagle had experience as Archbishop of Manila, and later as the head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, some within the Vatican saw him as not deeply embedded in the central networks of power. He was admired, yes, but not necessarily powerful. When the time came to choose a leader, there were other candidates who had stronger relationships inside the Vatican walls, had served longer in Rome, and were better known to the cardinals who would vote. In fact, Cardinal Tagle's work often took him away from the spotlight. He was on the ground with the poor. He was teaching, listening, praying, and serving. While others built alliances and strengthened their political positions in Rome, Tagle remained focused on the mission of love, mercy, and outreach. It's a painful irony that the very things that made him loved by the faithful, his humility, his service, and his lack of ambition, may have made him less likely to be chosen by those who wanted someone with strong institutional control and connections. In other words, he was too good to play the kind of politics that sometimes decide leadership. There was a powerful symbolism in the possibility of a Filipino pope. The Philippines is one of the most Catholic countries in the world. Its people are deeply spiritual, and the Church plays a central role in their daily lives. Having a pope from Asia, especially from such a vibrant Catholic country, would have been historic. It would have signaled a shift in the Church's center of gravity from Europe to the global South. But not everyone in the leadership of the Church was ready for that. For centuries, the papacy has been a European institution shaped by European culture and politics. Even Pope Francis, though from Argentina, is of Italian descent and deeply connected to the Roman world. To some, the idea of a pope from the Philippines, while exciting, raised questions. Would he understand the challenges of the Western Church? Would he be able to lead effectively in Europe, where Catholicism is shrinking and facing deep crises? There may have been fears, whether fair or not, that Tagle's deep connection to Filipino culture and his focus on the poor and marginalized would not translate well to the more secular and divided parts of the Catholic world. Some may have wondered whether he would have the global vision needed to deal with the Church's complex challenges in Europe and North America. This geographic hesitation wasn't just about location. It was also about familiarity. Many of the cardinals in the conclave were more familiar with European or Latin American candidates. They may not have understood Asia as deeply, or they may have felt more comfortable choosing someone who came from a world they knew better. In short, while the global Church may be growing fastest in places like Asia and Africa, the power still rests in Europe. And when faced with the chance to make a truly global shift, the leadership of the Church hesitated. Cardinal Tagle is not old by papal standards. In fact, at the time of the last major consideration for the papacy, he was young, enough to be a long-term leader, something that many might have seen as a strength. A younger pope could bring fresh energy, connect with youth, and lead the Church through decades of change. But age can also work against a candidate. Some cardinals may have feared giving too much power to someone who could potentially lead for a very long time, especially if they weren't sure about the direction he would take the Church. Others may have preferred a transitional pope, someone older, who would hold the seat for a shorter time and allow for future changes more quickly. Timing was also an issue. When Pope Francis was elected, the Church was facing different challenges. The priorities, fears, and goals of the cardinals have changed since then. By the time Tagle was seen as a possible successor, the moment for his kind of leadership may have passed. Some cardinals may have felt that the Church needed to pull back, to become more focused on internal discipline, doctrinal clarity, and institutional control. In that kind of environment, the compassionate, joyful, and mercy-driven approach of Tagle may have seemed out of step, not because it was wrong, but because it didn't match the mood of the leadership. In another time, in another season, he might have been the perfect choice. But the timing wasn't right, so those are the 4 biggest reasons why Cardinal Tagle was not chosen as pope. His perceived progressive leanings, his lack of political power inside the Vatican, cultural and geographic hesitations, and a mismatch in age and timing. But behind all of this is something deeper, a struggle inside the Church about its future. Is the Church ready to become truly global in leadership, not just in membership? Is it willing to embrace a style of leadership that listens more than it commands, that leads with compassion more than control? These are not just questions about Cardinal Tagle. These are questions about the soul of the Church itself. Cardinal Tagle remains a powerful figure. His voice